Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight for Ask the Expert. I'm Catherine, and I'm the Virtual Program Coordinator for the National Aphasia Association. The National Aphasia Association is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote public awareness and understanding of aphasia, to promote research that aims to improve the lives of people with aphasia, and to provide support to all persons with aphasia and their care partners. Our topic tonight is friendship and aphasia, and tonight's experts are Dr. Jamie Azios and Dr. Brent Archer, who I'll be introducing in just a moment. If you have questions for tonight's topic, and I'm sure that you will, we would love to hear them and share them with our experts. Please type your questions in the Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And then feel free to say hello or add a comment in the chat. We will answer as many of your questions about tonight's topic as we can. If we don't get to your question, or if you think of another question about friendship and aphasia or any other topic related to aphasia, please email the National Aphasia Association at answers@aphasia.org. And now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's experts. Jamie H. Azios, PhD, CCC-SLP, is the Doris B. Hawthorne Endowed Chair in the Department of Communicative Disorders at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Her research interests include qualitative research methodologies, understanding perspectives of people living with communication disabilities, co-constructed conversation in aphasia, and the impact of communicative environments on social participation and inclusion. She has published articles related to client-centeredness, communication access, functional outcomes of aphasia therapy, and friendship and aphasia. Brent Archer, PhD, CCC, SLP, is from Johannesburg, South Africa. After completing a degree in speech-language pathology and audiology at the University of Witwatersrand in 2006, Brent worked as a speech-language pathologist and audiologist at rural hospitals, clinics, schools, and kindergartens in the Free State Province of South Africa. In 2012, he entered the Applied Languages and Speech Sciences PhD program at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. In his dissertation, Brent used a number of frameworks to study conversation groups for people with aphasia. He was interested in understanding how groups of people with mild to severe language difficulties were able to remain effective, competent communicators. In 2016, Brent started work as a professor at Bowling Green State University, where he started the Aphasia Chat Lab. Conversation helps everyone take part. The work that Brent and his team do and the research he has published focuses on group therapy for people with aphasia, providing services that empower people with aphasia to communicate in real-world settings, and helping people and families living with aphasia stay connected to their friends. In 2020, Brent was chosen as a Tavistock Aphasia Distinguished Scholar. So Brent, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really look forward to this topic. And again, everyone start putting those questions in the Q&A and we'll get to them a little bit later.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine, for that lovely introduction. To get us started, I have a presentation on some research that Jamie and I and some other folks have been involved in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so thank you for joining me here today. The title of this talk is Building Programs that Help People with Aphasia Stay Connected to Their Friends. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce the research team. Here are the researchers who worked on this project. We also got help from other groups of people. Here are the people with lived experience of aphasia, the clinical advisors, and research advisors who helped us. I also want to thank the Tavistock Trust for Aphasia and the Texas Speech Language and Hearing Foundation for funding the research I'll be talking about tonight. What I want to do in this presentation is to talk about friendship and aphasia. Then I will talk about our research team's goals. Excuse me, sorry. Some research the team has done, a program for fighting loneliness we are working on, and a few ideas that people with aphasia and speech therapists can use to fight loneliness right now. To start off with, here we have a clip from a person with aphasia who took part in our research, telling us about the value of friendship in her life.
Because if I did not have my friendships, my close friendships, I would have been depressed. I would have been down on it all, and I would not have tried. But I tried because I wanted to talk. I wanted my friends to understand that I'm not giving up. So the encouragement is important of friends. Because if I didn't,
As I'm sure many of you have personally experienced, having aphasia often causes anxiety and depression. And like the person we just listened to says, not having friends can make these problems worse and decrease motivation. We also know that loneliness can make communication difficulties worse. Talking to friends helps you practice communication. If you don't have as many friends as you would like, you lose some of these opportunities. And so the goal of our research team is to make a program that will help people with aphasia stay connected to the friends they had at the time of their stroke or whatever other incident caused the aphasia. We think that keeping these relationships strong will help people with aphasia get support. And fighting loneliness will hopefully help with other problems like anxiety and depression. To get to this goal, we have done a few research projects. We found and read research about programs for fighting loneliness in people without aphasia. We interviewed people with aphasia. We interviewed care partners of people with aphasia. We interviewed friends of people with aphasia. And we found research on what speech therapists think about friendship and aphasia. Today, I want to talk about a project, the project where we interviewed people with aphasia. So what did they have to say about the issue of friendship? The aim of our study was to understand how aphasia impacted friendships, how people with aphasia felt about their friendships, and what they thought speech therapists could do to help. We spoke to 27 people with aphasia in America. We also asked them to fill out a picture that showed who their friends were and how close they were to their friends. Excuse me. Here you can see an example of the friendship picture that one of the people we spoke to filled out. Her name is in the middle. Her closest friends are in the yellow circle. Her less close friends are in the green circle. And her more distant friends are in the purple circle. For the study, we asked people to fill in the picture they had before their stroke, and we then talked to them in an interview about what their circles look like now. So we have a set of circles from before the stroke and a set of circles from after the stroke. This gave us information on how many friendships and the different types of friendships they had before and after aphasia. So now I would like to share some of the main ideas that people with aphasia told us. One main idea from our interviews is that friends need to learn basic information about aphasia. Here are 2 quotes about this from people with aphasia we spoke to.
I am still the same personality-wise, but functionally, I'm a little bit different.
Because I'm still me.
Right.
I can't communicate or, I can't do the things that I once did, but it's still me inside.
So you can see the big idea here is that aphasia doesn't change who you are. You are still the same person who was friends with your friends before you had your stroke.
I am
Because I'm still me.
Sorry. Another big idea from our interviews was about the things that good friends do when talking to people with aphasia. Here are quotes from 3 people about what friends can do to support one another during conversations.
Do they do anything to be better communicators with you? Do you think?
Slow down.
We went to
Sorry, this guy is a little bit quiet, but it does become more audible towards the end of the clip.
Do they do anything to be better?
Sorry.
part of the room that was a little quieter.
Mhm.
the yeah, if I can hear, but but when it's loud, there's too much stimulation.
I am comfortable with them, and then with me, they would be patient and helpful.
And these three ideas, talk slower, talk in a quiet place, and be patient, give the person with aphasia time to respond. These three ideas came up again and again in our interviews with the people with aphasia.
We went to a
I am comfortable with them, and then
Yeah.
And thank God for what's this?
And then another main idea from our interviews was that technology helps us stay in touch with one another. Many of the people with aphasia we interviewed told us that technology was a lifeline that helped them stay connected to their friends. And here is a quote from one of the people we spoke to about this.
Thank God for what's this called? Not FaceTime, but the Zoom.
Zoom.
Zooming. Thank God for that.
And so as you could hear there, for this person, Zooming was a very important form of technology that helped her keep her relationships with her friends. And so after we did this research, where we spoke to people with aphasia, we spoke to care partners, we spoke to friends of people with aphasia, we have now started to develop a program. And we have taken all of this information, and the program is called Anchor, which stands for Aphasia, Nurturing Connection, Honoring Ongoing Relationships. Anchor is a program that we hope will stop friends drifting apart after one of them gets aphasia. We made Anchor because people with aphasia have told us they struggle to stay connected to their friends. In the program, each person with aphasia and a friend will get coaching from a trained speech-language pathologist. The program lasts for 3 sessions. Each session is about an hour long. We want to provide the program to people with aphasia and their friends very soon after their strokes, as soon as possible. I do apologize if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse. I am just getting over a cold, and so that's why it's a little, it sounds like that. What are the topics in the Anchor program? We plan to give basic information about aphasia, like aphasia does not impact intellect, and aphasia does not change your friendship or your happy memories together. We will also talk about how you can use technology to stay in touch. And then we will talk about the things that friends can do to have good, enjoyable conversations together. We need to make sure that the Anchor program works. So the research team I introduced you to earlier, we are going to apply for a grant in September of this year. We are going to research if our program works, and we're going to focus on 30 people with aphasia and see if the Anchor program helps them stay connected to the friends they had at the time of their stroke. After that, we want to refine the program, make it better, and do a much bigger study with more people. We then plan to release Anchor for speech therapists and people with aphasia to use. We are still testing Anchor, but we want to share some information on a few things that speech therapists and people with aphasia can do right now to help prevent loneliness. Some basic ideas you could start using are speech language pathologists could provide people with aphasia and their friends with basic information about aphasia, what aphasia is, and what it does and does not change. Speech language pathologists could teach friends these simple things to do when talking with people with aphasia. As we said, the three main ideas that come up a lot are slow down, talk in a quiet place, and be patient. Those three ideas seem to make a big difference. And then finally, speech language pathologists could encourage friends with and without aphasia, from both sides, to use different forms of technology to communicate. An example might be teaching people with aphasia and their friends how to use things like Zoom to communicate. Here are some of the publications that our team has, if anybody is interested. And so to conclude, we are learning a lot while doing this research. We hope that it will help people and families living with aphasia continue to find joy in their friendships. Thank you for listening to me today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brent, for sharing some of our findings from our initial studies. We have a few minutes now before we go to questions that we thought we might ask you to do a little bit of thinking on your own about your relationships and your friendships and what that really means to you. So I am pulling up this circle diagram, this circle picture that Brent told you a little bit about already. This is a model that we can use to think about our friendships. And so in the interview, we worked with people with aphasia to tell us and share with us friends that were very close, yellow friends, friends before and after aphasia that were their green friends, their kind of mid-close friends, and then their purple friends, which were the distant friends. And where a person may fall on these circles represents how close of the relationship you feel. So how close of a friend do you feel like they are to you? And so I'd like to show you a few examples from a paper that we published that will give you kind of two examples before you start thinking about your friendships. So we're going to call this person with aphasia Alice. And we can see here that before aphasia, Alice had just a few close friends here in yellow. Anne, Tracy, and Sam. She had a green friend, and she had some distant friends that were her work friends. This was before aphasia. But after aphasia, if I can move this over here, her friendship networks really changed. She only maintained one of her close friends, Sam, but she actually gained a lot more new friends that she considered distant friends. And many of these friends were people with aphasia and people that she had met doing different kinds of community aphasia groups. So that's one example. And then I'd like to show you Kathy's friendship diagrams. Before aphasia, Kathy had a few close friends, Rita and some church friends. She had a few green friends, Susie and Melissa. And then she had several distance friends, friends from school, friends from her children's sports teams, and her work friends. But after aphasia, Kathy's friendship networks changed. She still had Rita as a close friend, but she gained some aphasia friends that she felt very, very close in her relationships with. We see she has a few green friends, but her distant friends, the people that she worked with, the people that she met from her children's sports activities, she was no longer able to maintain those relationships. And so that is an example of how friendship changed for these two women after aphasia. We have found that asking, well, we have reflected on our friendships in this way personally, and we have also asked clinicians that we've worked with to reflect on their friendships and what friendship means to them by filling out this circle graph. And so we'd like to spend just a few minutes with you on your own, thinking through where you fall in relation to your close friends, your yellow friends, your kind of medium friends, your green friends, and your distant friends, those friends on the outer edge, your purple friends. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes to think about this. Maybe just write a list on the side, or you can type a list on your iPad or your computer. Nobody will see this. It's just something for you to be thinking about what friends you have and where they might fall and how important that is to you. So I'll do it here while you guys work on this on your own. hopefully that's given you a little bit of time to think through some of your relationships and how important they are to you. And think about what you value in a friendship and what might be some qualities of those people that might fall in that inner circle that makes them really close to you. One thing that we heard over and over again from people with aphasia is while some things like how close you lived to somebody mattered, there were other things that mattered more, like how a friend maybe made them feel when they talked to them, even if they didn't see them a lot in their life and only talked to them once or two times a year. They still felt very close to that person and ended up putting them as a yellow friend. And so we feel like thinking through those relationships and the different kinds of qualities and experiences that you have might make you think differently about the friends that you want to keep and want to hang around. I think that's all for this part, and I think we're ready to take some questions.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for giving us that time, Jamie, to spend some time really thinking about our own social circles, because you both really emphasize how important those friendships are. So that was really helpful. And people can, there was a link in the chat if people want to download that. It's also available on our website. Or, like Jamie said, you can even just jot it down or chat with your care partner or family member and think about that. So, thank you. We have a few questions coming in, so we'll get going with those. First, in interviewing people with aphasia and their friends, were there any strategies used to maintain friendships? And can you give us some examples of those?
I guess I'll take the first one, Brent, if that's okay. Yeah, we heard lots and lots of success stories in how friends and people with aphasia worked through different aspects of their relationship and different activities to maintain really strong bonds. And one of the things that comes to mind is that friends that stuck around tended to adapt activities so that the person with aphasia could still take part. So we had a couple of examples of a friend and a person with aphasia that played dominoes together. And the friend recognized that the way that he communicated during dominoes play had to shift a little bit, and even kind of stretching the rules a little bit in the domino games. And it was a very competitive domino league. But the friend recognized that that was an important thing that they could do together. And so that example comes to mind. Another example that comes to mind is a friend that knew it was important. The person with aphasia wanted to go back to the gym and found it very overwhelming to go back to the gym on her own to try to navigate the kinds of exercises and the equipment that she used before her stroke. And so the friend kind of made an aphasia friendly map of the gym and drew it out for her and kind of walked her through the kinds of activities that they did together before her stroke and gave that to her. And both people shared that example of a way that they can maintain this bond just by some small adaptations and really, easy things that the friend just reflected on and did for the person with aphasia.
I love that. These little things go a long way. And actually, we just got a question that's a great piggyback off that. How about strategies for making new friends?
Should I take that one, Jamie?
Sure.
Yeah, I think from the people we talked to, the people who grew their networks after they had aphasia, or the people who made lots of new friends after aphasia, they put themselves out there. They thought about plans. They were intentional about what they were going to do, and then they carried out these plans. I think that sometimes we think that friendships just develop naturally, and that's an important part of it, right? You can't force people to be your friends. It's not that kind of relationship. But there are things you can do to get yourself opportunities to meet new people. And so one of the things that many people did was they joined an aphasia group, right? And this helped them meet other people with aphasia. But there are many other things you can do, even if you, excuse me, it's really valuable to be in an aphasia group because people will mentor one another and support one another. But you may want new friends who don't have aphasia. And so think about hobbies, pastimes, put yourself out there and get these opportunities for yourself. So basically, it's not a super complicated answer, but the people we spoke to seems to work quite well.
Great. We had a question about if some of your research or these thoughts also might apply to romantic relationships in addition to friendships. So, can you speak on that as well?
Yeah, I think, there are important differences, in romantic relationships and the kinds of friendships and the kinds of questions that we were asking about in these interviews. But we did interview several significant others. And probably about, I don't know, 75% of the significant others were the spouse of a person with aphasia. And so I think one of the things that in a romantic relationship that was talked about was trying to balance this new life, and there might be an overprotectedness in the very beginning of romantic relationships that are it's difficult to kind of move forward and understand how to foster independence in my partner with aphasia. And this was being specifically talked about in the context of letting a person with aphasia go out and do things that they used to do, like play in a band and go out with friends. And there seemed to be a balance of wanting to help and be there and support, but then also not being overprotective. And so that's one example that comes to mind from a romantic relationships. We didn't really ask those kinds of questions, but that came to mind.
Great. That actually, there was another question we got you made me think of this. Someone asked, have you received feedback on why it's hard for the friends without the aphasia? Are they concerned about frustrating the person, or what are the challenges for them, for that partner?
That's a great question. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, so that's why we really also wanted to talk to the friends of people with aphasia, because we could understand the experience from their side. And I think for me, what it usually comes down to is the friends don't know anything about aphasia, and they don't realize that most people are going to recover a lot. So a common story that comes up in the interviews is, I went to go see my friend. They were lying in their hospital bed. They were not responsive. And the friend thinks that it's impossible to continue to have the same kind of relationship as they did beforehand, not realizing that it's still me, right? The person with aphasia is still there. All your happy memories and all the times you had together, they can still remember them. Their personality is the same. Their intellect has not been changed by aphasia. And if you go and see somebody early on, that's not what they're going to be like. They're going to make a recovery in most cases. Most people are going to get a lot better after 3 months, after 6 months, after a year. And so we think that if friends just knew some basic information, they would stick around, right? They would realize that I can still be friends with this person. They remember who I am. We can still have this relationship that is enjoyable for both of us. So I think from the friend's perspective, that was a big issue. If they had understood what aphasia was earlier on, their relationship would have gone smoother, I think.
I'd like to piggyback off that a little bit. You know, a couple of friends talked about there was a lot of uncertainty, as Brent is saying, and not being sure what to do in what situation, and being a little bit nervous about that. And friends also talked about putting a lot of pressure on themselves to kind of bring their A game when they knew that they were going to be hanging out with their friend with aphasia. They really wanted to be present. They wanted to be patient. And they knew if they had a lot of stuff going on in their own head, they wouldn't be as good of a communication partner. And so one of the things that I think we're trying to incorporate into Anchor is helping a friend understand that not every activity needs to involve communication. Don't, you know, there's no need to put so much pressure on yourself that you have to, you know, be talking all the time. Helping them think through some activities that might be a little lower stakes and a little more supportive naturally. So that's something we're really thinking about in Anchor, and helping to friends to think through on their own and pick some things that they might like to do with a person with aphasia that might feel a little less pressure in those situations.
Great. Those are great suggestions. I see in the audience, I have a member of my aphasia wellness group, and he shared with us that he enjoys going on a silent retreat. It's yoga and meditation with a whole bunch of people who are silent, and how lovely that is. Obviously, that's extreme, but still, I think, like you said, every activity doesn't have to be about working on communication. So great. We have another question / comment. Someone writes that to me, one-on-one with a friend, it's helpful because she listens and tries to understand. Okay, do you mean? But if there's 2 or more, it's more difficult and she finds herself just listening. So what advice do you have for one-on-one versus groups of friends?
That's your realm, Brent. Take it.
Well, it's I think it's our realm together, Jamie. But yeah, you know, when there are 2 or more people in a conversation, it's hard because when you want to take a turn, right? There's more people, and so you know it's harder for you to to get your turn in there, and maybe that's the reason why the person who asked the question just listens more. And so I think maybe a way to address that is to talk to your friends about some simple strategies, simple ideas that they can use when communicating. Just slowing down, right, would help. So when you're talking, not feeling that as soon as one person is done, somebody has to start talking. No, there can be a little pause. And if the person with aphasia wants to jump in, they can do that. So yeah, it's really about helping everybody make room in the conversation for all of the friends, the people who have aphasia and the friends who don't. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do with Anchor, is to teach the friends how to communicate in a supportive way. And we also hope that the idea with Anchor is it's a person with aphasia and their friend who completes the program together. And we hope that the friends will kind of become advocates for this new way of communicating and go out and reach other people in your circle and spread the ideas about how to communicate. So yeah, it is possible. People have just got to change the way they communicate.
That's great. And I think folks, your program sounds amazing. And actually we did share in the events page, and we can put the link in the chat too, the flyer for your research that you're doing. But folks can also, if they're still doing speech therapy, bring a friend with you to the speech therapy session, right? Or if you're doing one of the aphasia groups, most of them are happy to have care partners and friends join too. So great. Another question. How do you connect to friends who try to compare their struggles to yours and don't realize their encouragement comes across as dismissive of your struggles or minimizing them? For example, I've noticed that I forget things the older I get too. It makes me want to shut down to those people. Good question.
Great question. And, I don't live with aphasia, so we probably shouldn't be the ones trying to answer this question. So I won't try to answer it, but I will just share that I think many people with aphasia feel that way based on the data that we've looked at and the stories that have been told to us. And it does seem like you're talking about empathy. And we did learn from the studies that we've done that some friends are just naturally able to listen and have an empathetic ear, and other friends are not. And what we learned is that the friends that were more likely to stick around were the ones that had true empathy for people with aphasia. And sometimes that was a result of sharing an experience that kind of made them lean on the person with aphasia. For instance, there was a couple different narratives about a friend that went through a divorce or lost their mother, and the person with aphasia was really there for them during that time. And that kind of created some reciprocity, this feeling of mutual back and forth of the relationship, give and take. And so that kind of generated some empathy there. And so I don't know that there's no answer, but I just want to validate that many people with aphasia told us a similar situation. And I'm sorry that you're experiencing that, and that I hope that you can find some other friends that can have a more balanced, empathetic approach to understanding your situation.
You shared how people's social connections can shift, and some of the friends who are originally in someone's circle may not be there, so that they may still have the same number, but it shifts. Did people share how they felt about the loss of some of those friendships, or seeing there are just some that didn't, even if you still have a full circle, there probably is some grieving of that loss?
Absolutely.
We, going kind of along that theme, someone wrote that they felt secluded or like an outcast. For someone who's having those feelings, do you have any suggestions to reach out, make those friendships? That obviously goes along with that loneliness piece, Brent, that you were talking about too.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me that people feel secluded and lonely, because I had never heard the word aphasia before I, started studying to be a speech language pathologist. And I'm guessing most of the people on the call tonight hadn't heard the word until you had your stroke or whatever it is that caused your aphasia. And so, and again, as Jamie was saying, I don't have aphasia, and so my insights here are somewhat limited. But I do know from talking to the people in our study that a lot of them talked specifically about aphasia groups, and having this experience of, I thought I was the only person in the world who had this issue. And then I went to a group and I realized I wasn't, right? And I think, at least from our perspective, it seemed as though that helped people understand that they weren't alone, that there were other people. And it was really valuable to connect with people who were further along in their journeys. I think there are lots of really good things that speech language pathologists can do, but overall, in general, we don't have aphasia. There are some of us who do, but in general, I think. And so meeting other people with aphasia, I think, can be extremely valuable for combating that sense of loneliness, realizing there are other people who have lived through something similar, not exactly the same, but who can empathize with you, and who can support you. And the nice thing nowadays, one of the only positive things about the pandemic, is that everything went online, and we're all used to it now. And so there are many options, even if you are not in an area where there's an aphasia group. Hopefully there's an option for you online. So I think, in as much as I have any insight on that question, I would say that aphasia groups are really important for helping combat that sense of seclusion, being an outcast.
Great. And I see we've been sharing some links and resources in the chat, but the National Aphasia Association does have a provider search. We're working on enhancing it and making it even easier to find resources in your area, but you can check that out. And also, you can always email answers@aphasia.org to reach someone at the NAA and find supports, whether it's virtual or local to you. And actually, I think we're almost out of time, but one last question. You talked about those in-person versus virtual social interactions. Have you gotten any feedback from your participants or done any research on if one is better than the other? Is it just as good to get those virtual social connections and friendships? Is it better to try to find them in person? What are you learning about that?
I think one thing that we've learned is that friendship is highly, highly individualized. And so you know, many people felt differently about those kinds of situations, and or many people needed a combination of those kinds of friends. And so good, good, better, not as good, it's hard to put a qualifier on it, but thinking through like doing something like writing your friends' names down and thinking about what you value in a relationship, like we did with the circles, that can help you answer some of those questions on your own about whether you want to pursue more relationships that are really heavily based in Zoom or technology, or if a closeness, physical and being there with people is really better for you. I certainly do think that there are challenges to communicating in a virtual space, that might require some different strategies to keep communication going, to keep conversation going. And so thinking through your own experiences with aphasia and what your preferences are in terms of communication and the supports that you feel like you need, I think is another key thing to consider with in-person versus kind of more virtual friends and spaces.
All right. Well, on that note, it's just about 8 o'clock. So thank you, Jamie and Brent, so much for sharing your insight with us. Thank you, everyone who attended tonight and asked the questions. It was a really interesting conversation. Just some more resources for everyone. If you want more information on the National Aphasia Association, visit us online at www.aphasia.org. We have information, we have resources, provider search, so lots of good information there. For more information on our virtual events, including Ask the Expert, go to aphasia.org/online-events. We have a number of virtual programs, including conversation groups. And our next Ask the Expert webinar is going to be Thursday, September 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And our topic will be primary progressive aphasia, or PPA. So definitely tune in for that. Again, if you have any questions about tonight's topic or any other questions about aphasia, please email your questions to answers@aphasia.org. And if you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions for this Ask the Expert webinar series, please feel free to email me at catherine@aphasia.org. So thank you all again for spending your evening with us tonight. We hope to see you next time. Thanks again, Brent and Jamie.
Thank you for having us.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.